Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are
The
the FAIRtax Guys.
How about that?
I still have my gear ball here left over from last week.
Yeah, that an amazing resemblance to the tax code.
Yes, it does.
If the tax code were a Rubik's Cube, it would look like that one.
If the tax code were a Rubik's Cube, it would fill half the room, is what it would.
Right. It would be. You'd have to have 50 people to turn it.
Well, I tell you, but we remember when Ron and I would do this from the same studio side by side, we'd have the cubes sitting out in front of us. I have the little 2x2,
Yes,
which represents the FAIRtax. And I figured out one time, just looking at how many pieces are in that cube. A 2x2 has, just 8 pieces.
right.
And I compare the number of pages in the FAIRtax bill to the 70-some thousand plus pages worth of statutes and regulations and court case decisions, all those pages of stuff that makes up the tax code, and try to compare how many pages, how many times more pages the income tax has than the FAIRtax, and then extrapolate that over to a cube, and it came up kind of with that if we were actually going to have a Rubik's Cube comparison of the FAIRtax versus the income tax, and the FAIRtax is a little 2x2, the income tax would be like almost 30 by 30.
Yikes.
And of course, you got 30 pieces across and 30 pieces down. That's 900 pieces on just one face. And there's
just on the side. Oh my!
Just on one side.
Oh,
so of course, some pieces belong to two sides, the edges and the corners do, but you'd still end up with just millions, not quite millions, but thousands of pieces.
There would be
in the income tax cube versus 8 for the FAIRtax cube.
Love it. Hey, we love the FAIRtax, and that's one of the things we talk about on our show every week, and we appreciate you being out there. We want you to go to the YouTube channel, to Rumble, to all of the places where you can pick up the show and subscribe and send us a message and let us know you did, and we can say thank you right now for doing that in advance. And I think one of the things that I am going to do this year as one of the stocking stuffers for my family and friends, and maybe some enemies too, because I probably have a few out there, to give them a copy of Publication 17 from the Internal Revenue Service, because it is getting to be that time of year where you have to figure out your income tax. And the 17 publication is line by line everything that has to go in and the things that you have to consider.
We'll tease this a little bit. There is a portion of Publication 17 that is in our Tax Reform Hall of Shame, which will be going over here in I think 3 weeks. I'm not going to give away what it is. You'll have to tune in 3 weeks and see what we're talking about.
That's right.
We'll be going through the entire Tax Reform Hall of Shame on our last FAIRtax Power Radio episode of the calendar year of December, which will be a couple of days after Christmas this time. But I say one of the things we always love to do here is compare the elegant simplicity of the FAIRtax versus the incredible, incomprehensible complexity of the income tax. You follow that?
It's incredibly complex, and the FAIRtax is incredibly simple.
It is, and that's why I like to dig into.
We need a sound effect for that.
Yeah, we need a sound effect. You need to design a little graphic, intro for this thing.
Yes,
so we can just toss it up on the screen and say, all right. But anyhow, we look into Congress.gov. You go to Congress.gov.
Bless their hearts.
Up in the search, that's a good Southern expression. Up in the search bar at the top of the page, you write the words Internal Revenue Code, enclose those 3 words in quotes. Be sure on the left side you're looking only at legislation in the current Congress. And let's see, as we do this, we recorded this about a week and a half ago, but as of the time we were recording this, that search now brings back 2,074 hits. Now, not all of those will a little kind of truth in advertising here. Not all of those hits represent a proposed change to the tax code. There are some statutes and proposed laws that just simply reference the tax code. As I say, if we're talking about, tax exempt organizations as defined in section 501c3 or c4,
Sure.
and you'd reference the Internal Revenue Code, that those will also be returned in that. But a good majority, a good chunk of those 2,074 hits are indeed proposals to change the tax code, including, shall we start with HR 9313. HR 9313, and there is a companion Senate bill for this as well, which is S 5108. It is the Housing for Homeless Students Act of 2022. Got that? Housing for Homeless Students Act of 2022. And again, that's one of those things you look at it and says, well, what does that have to do with the tax code? You open it up and it says this bill is a proposal to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to qualify homeless youth and veterans who are full-time students for the purposes of the low-income housing tax credit. Got that?
Yes. Part of another piece of the tax code is now impacted by, or could be impacted by, this subject.
Yes, HR 9313 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to qualify homeless youth and veterans who are full-time students for the purposes of the low-income housing tax credit. I guess if you've got now the title talks about homeless students. It doesn't. Oh, yeah, it does say, it says a homeless students, homeless youth and veterans. My mistake. But yeah, if you're homeless, then they're going to try to give you this low-income housing tax credit. I guess so. You can go out and find some low-income housing if you're homeless.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the low-income individuals and families, they're not necessarily required to file a tax return, but they have to file a tax return in order to get some of the benefits that are being presented for them.
Mm-hmm. All right, here's another one. This is HR 9299, Senate Companion Bill 5086, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to protect children's health by denying any deduction for advertising and marketing directed at children to promote the consumption of food of poor nutritional quality. Boy, you couldn't have a tax code without that, can you?
I'm telling you what, I'm going to get a Slurpee. I'm going to get a big triple double cheeseburger with everything on it, and I'm going to eat it right in front of that bill.
And I'll give you a bottle of Cheerwine to go with it.
I'll top off the drink with some Cheerwine.
There you go. Now
I'll freeze it and make some Cheerwine ice cream.
Yeah, I've done that before. It's actually quite good.
But sure
now I got to be careful. I'm not trying to portray Cheerwine as something of poor nutritional quality.
No, I was just saying all of those other things I was going to get were just, that's my business, not the business of the government.
Well, there are people who would classify Cheerwine and Dr. Pepper and all that other good stuff that I like as sugary soda drinks, and that's not poor. That is poor nutritional quality. That's the problem with something like this. Yeah. What is the definition of poor nutritional quality, and who gets to decide, whether the nutritional quality of the food you're buying or you're marketing to children is what this is about?
Well, right, absolutely, and there are rules and regulations regarding television and radio programming as it relates to the potential consumption by children. Well, we could get off on a whole nother topic right now about how parents let their children have smartphones and devices that allow them to scan the internet basically unsupervised. But that's a whole nother show, not another segment for this particular show, but that's a whole nother show.
It used to be, and it's still this way to some degree. That a good chunk of the advertising in the fast food industry, Burger King, McDonald's, Wendy's, all those, they would advertise to kids because they're figuring, if the kids can, gee, I want to go out and get this, Happy Meal or something, that they'll drag the parents with them. So right. you've got a lot of advertising
You're gonna end up
of food that some people may say is of poor nutritional quality. And now they're going to try to say, well, if your food doesn't meet my standard, I'm not going to let you deduct your
right.
advertising expense as a normal, business expense like everybody else does.
It's just one more thing that the business or the family, the whoever's advertising that that particular product that the government says doesn't need to be advertised to kids. That's one more layer of the tax code that has to be dealt with in a business. And here
more complexity.
More of that right there.
More complexity being added into the tax code. And again, it's trying to empower certain people.
Bless their heart.
I want to be the one that determines whether your food is good enough to get this qualify for your marketing deduction or not.
Well, I won't get into. Isn't the FDA supposed to be in charge of some of that to make sure that I mean, I just don't see.
I guarantee that if they set some kind of standard, that that would just be something else that the lobbyists would attack with fervor.
Right.
And there would be more a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to change the definition of poor nutritional quality as it relates to the advertising and marketing directed at children tax credit.
And for other purposes.
And for other purposes. Can't you just, folks? Why?
Water skiing is dangerous.
Why did you put up with this?
Cartwheeling.
I'm talking to you. Why do you put up with a tax system like this? Why are you not all over your congressional representatives and your senators demanding that they replace all this garbage with a fair tax?
Hey, yes. Just think about, take your blood pressure, in the next 60 days, wait until January 15th when you're having to start opening up the shoe boxes of receipts and things and getting all your taxes together. Take your blood pressure then. And then wait until about June when you're sitting on the beach like Bob is and take your pulse and your blood pressure then. And the beach and the nice and calm and the wind blowing and the sun, lots of vitamin D. That is what your life is going to be like on the fair tax.
And your airplane pulling the FAIRtax banner over the beach.
Just flying along right there. But that's my opinion. I can't say that your blood pressure is going to be changed at all by using the fair tax, but I think that it probably would in some of those key instances where you've had to deal with your tax accountant or you're in the business for yourself and you've got to deal with all of the machinations of collecting the information for your employees and for your business and all the things that you could be doing with that time is now consumed by the tax code when it doesn't have to be. So the blood pressure in about 60 days and the blood pressure on the beach where Bob is sometime this summer and see which one's higher.
Right. I'll do it. Well, I'm thinking if we have to have a tax code that contains the definition of municipal solid waste, then I guess we just also have to have a tax code that lays out nutritional quality standards for food that's marketed to children.
Bless their hearts.
Who knows? All right. One more here. This is S5100. And this isn't necessarily a proposal to change the tax code. I just thought this was incredibly telling. The S5100 from Senator Thune of South Dakota is the IRS Funding Accountability Act. The IRS Funding Accountability Act. And that just basically says, somebody's going to have to be held accountable for the way that the IRS spends their money.
You think?
I think, especially now since they've gotten this huge influx of new money from the Inflation Reduction Act. And it again, why does it take an act of Congress to require somebody to behave in a financially responsible manner?
Spoiler alert, because they're not. They're not.
There you go. It takes an act of Congress to make the IRS be accountable for the money that it spent, how it spends and that's our money, your money and my money. That's the money that's being spent here. and we need to demand accountability. So I guess it's a good thing that there's an act of Congress there demanding that the IRS be accountable. But the system is so screwed up that if something like that, if you need an act of Congress to require accountability, you're dealing with a really, really crazy system that deserves to be pulled out by the roots and replaced with something far simpler and far easier to understand and far easier to administer.
Okay, I got a history lesson for you.
Okay, proceed.
September 2006. Okay, now got a question for you to lead into this.
Okay.
IRS is part of the federal government, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, so, but it is an agency of the federal government, right?
Yes.
Back in September of 2006, the Federal Funding, Accountability, and Transparency Act was signed into law. The intent was to empower every American with the ability to hold the government accountable for each spending decision. That's the Congress. The end result is to reduce wasteful spending in the government.
Oh, so, how did that work out for you?
We have this path. There's just so much convoluted that goes on in Washington that it's hard to keep up with. And so here is this little, very nicely designed and very, very pretty words that describe that we have the ability to hold the government accountable. Do we go to our Congress? Is there a telephone number that we need to be calling and say, we need to hold you accountable? But wouldn't you think that broad rule, that broad law would transfer over to the Internal Revenue Service? Not under the same act, but the end result would be to.
You'd think so.
We should probably use that and say, look, we need y'all to take a look at the Internal Revenue Service that you just gave $87 billion to and see if we can reduce some wasteful spending there. Obviously, what Thune is talking about is an offshoot of the FAIRtax, which was signed into law back in 2006.
Yes.
Unbelievable. No, it's believable. I'm sorry. It's believable. It's crazy.
It requires the Commissioner of Internal Revenue shall submit a new spending plan under subsection B, 1A, and on and on and on it goes. It's just, but again, the idea we even talk about this on FAIRtax Power Radio, simply to show people what craziness is in the tax code and convince them we need to get rid of it. The FAIRtax repeals every bit of this. It repeals all of the statutory authority to collect an income tax, including the definition of municipal solid waste and nutritional standards for food marketed to children. All of that is repealed because you don't need it to collect the money that you need to run the federal government. All you need is the 130 some pages of the FAIRtax bill. Game over, end of discussion.
That's right. And, and we talk about this from time to time on the show, 2013 or something like that. The 16th Amendment was put into place. It was excise taxes, but no income tax prior to that.
It was actually 1913.
I did. What did I say? 2013. So long ago, I can't even remember what planet am I on right now? I don't know. But anyway, it's the planet of confusion because of the Internal Revenue Service. No, in 1913, we moved into this, but we're not old enough to remember a time, none of us really, unless you're born back in 1890 and still living, remember a time where there wasn't an income tax. And so we take for granted that is where we are. And that's the only thing that we can do. Well, it's the way we have to collect the money. No, it isn't. And the FAIRtax outlines the tax on consumption that will clear all this mess out. And Bob and I can go sit on that beach that he is in front of right now and not have to worry about all this, except maybe just kind of getting together and have fun every now and then.
Well, it might be a mosquito come in. You got to run it off every now and then. Right. But last week on FAIRtax Power Radio, we went through some of the Newsmax article that said your refund is going to be smaller because there have been some changes to the tax code. And we went through some of the changes to the tax code. And guess what? We've got more changes to the tax code to talk about this week.
Well, they
which
were
one of
working hard over the summer, and back in October, some of the new tax brackets for the federal income tax and the standard deductions for next year have been released.
Yeah, I was going to ask you which of the two articles you want to dig into first.
Let's do Barron's first.
Okay, that's here on this tab. Okay, go ahead.
Barron's,
I'll let you lead this
Barron's,
since this is
Elizabeth
your
O'Brien.
article.
Elizabeth O'Brien back in wrote this in October. These are the new federal tax brackets and standard deductions for 2023. For the 2023 tax year, this is what kicks in and starts churning, not for this year that you were going to do the taxes for 2022 and 2023. This is what we're going to be working on 13 months from now.
Okay.
In 2020, beginning of 2024, we'll look back at what they're talking about here. The standard deduction for married couples filing jointly for tax year 2023 will rise to $27,700. It's up $1,800 from what we're going to do for this year. The standard deduction is, of course, the amount that taxpayers can subtract from their income before they owe taxes on the rest. You can't take the standard deduction if you itemize your deductions. I've always played the game of seeing if I can get there, but I never can. So single taxpayers, married people filing separately, standard deduction will rise to $13,850, which is up $900. For heads of households, it will rise to $20,800, up $1,400. People over age 65 that are 65 and older can claim an additional standard deduction of $1,500.
That's us.
That's us. You. That's you, Bob. And I'm not
quite
there yet, but I'm catching up.
Okay.
Actually, I'll tell you a story when we get off the air here today about how I'm not going to have a birthday after this year coming. So anyway, it's pretty interesting. And if y'all were interested in, please, ask the question on Facebook.
Yeah, I think you're getting off in the weeds here. Let's get back to where
anyway, yeah. But anyway, I'm not going to have a birthday come. So anyway, you can claim an additional standard deduction if you're over age 65 of $1,500 for 2023, or $1,850 if that person is unmarried or without a surviving spouse. It just continues to get. I mean, these are things that we have to keep up with. Publication 17, I'm sure, will be updated to include all of this. The federal marginal tax rates remain the same for tax year 2023, but the income thresholds for each bracket have been adjusted upward for inflation. Inflation? What are you talking about? 35%. Incomes over $231,250. 32%. Incomes over $100,000. 24% incomes over $95,375. The 22% bracket incomes over $44,725. Are your eyes glossing over yet over there, Mr.?
I'm thinking, why don't we just have a tax system that automatically adjusts itself for inflation?
Yeah.
There, you don't have to go through all these hoops every year or every however often they do this.
Married couples filing jointly. And I won't go through all of them because it's just a litany of tax.
We only got about 5 minutes left.
Well, I won't go. I'll speed up then. 37% rather, incomes greater than $693,750. That's for married couples filing jointly, all the way down to 12% incomes over $22,000 at just about the poverty level. 10% incomes of $22,000 or less. And the annual gift exclusion is going to go to $17,000 per recipient. Estates of people who die during 2023 have a basic exclusion of around 12 million to 12.9 million, up from 12,060,000. Now, as you think about tax planning, these are all things that your tax attorney or your tax accountant will help you with. The inflation adjustments will probably, as inflation begins to go down over time, we don't know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen anytime soon. But can you imagine that the inflation adjusted tax exclusions are going to go back down?
Yeah. I
I
don't
think
need
you're
a
probably
tax advisor, and I don't need any inflation adjusted exclusions if I'm paying my taxes at the cash register when I buy things.
right. That's right. And we talk about the low income individuals who we all get, all of us get the prebate. But right now, the low income individuals don't have to file a tax return unless they are looking for a way to receive a benefit that they may get by
One of
turning
those
in.
refundable tax credits that the Congress critters are always messing
Yeah.
with.
Those who think they might have missed out on some of the benefits for 2021 with regard to stimulus payments have until November 17th, which is now passed. But these are all things that just go, and like I said a minute ago, are your eyes glossing over yet? Are your eyes glossing over? I mean, these
Yes.
the complexities of the tax code just keep moving forward out into the future. And talking about 2023, and the article that was with Forbes is essentially going over the same thing. If you want to check that out, Janet Novak wrote that also in October when all of these new numbers were released.
Yeah, well, I think my eyes are glazed over. I'm going to go to the kitchen and get me another turkey sandwich.
You need to really glaze your eyes over.
Oh, just about it.
Make sure this is the weekend that you have to set your scales back 15 pounds. If you haven't done so, please take advantage of that credit right now.
Absolutely. I tell you, but this is the kind of crazy tax system that we have had in this country for as long as, any of us that are living can remember. It does not have to be this way. We can get rid of all this stuff and replace it with the fair tax.
And we need your help. We need folks that are listening and watching. We really encourage you to follow us, to communicate with us. We're available. If you have questions, begin to conversations in your neighborhood and at your workplace and amongst the people that you come across on a daily basis. Help us out and let's get this thing rolling. Really rolling.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think I'll go digging around in some of the stuff I've got and take you up on your proposition that we go devote another whole show here on FAIRtax Power Radio to the prebate, how it works. Because the prebate is really what makes the fair tax a fair tax.
It's a game changer. It is an absolute game changer for the.
So most of the people that watch a show every week know about it already, but let's give them a resource that they can direct their friends and family to that might not know about how this works.
Right.
That say, hey, let's go watch this and see how this thing is much better than what we've got now. So we'll go ahead and do us another prebate show here in the next week or two on FAIRtax Power Radio, and then we'll do our tax proposal Hall of Shame for the year. Yeah. That will just be that will be incredibly cool. But that's about all the time we've got for FAIRtax Power Radio this week. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000. Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?
Oh, you'd bring home every penny.